Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to We the People. Today I'm going to be covering the Washington's farewell address. I was going to read the farewell address to you, but it's rather lengthy and it would cause delays in getting my video out. So I'm just going to go through and give you a synopsis on the farewell address that President Washington gave. And it starts in 1796. President Washington decided it was time to retire from public life after 2 terms in office and decades of public service. The 64-year-old was careworn, weary, and frustrated by the attacks of his political enemies. He would not seek a third term in office. Washington's farewell address, published at the end of his second term, stands today as a timeless warning about forces that threaten American democracy. But Washington had always intended to depart the presidency once he felt the Constitution was well established and the country was on solid footing. To Washington, this time had come. Washington begins his address by explaining his decision to not seek a third term as president. He had hoped to retire from his first term. He said, but for the critical posture of our affairs with foreign nations, and unanimous advice of persons entitled to my confidence compelled me to abandon the idea. So he wanted to retire after his first. After his first term, but after further consideration, he decided that he needed to stay for one more term. So, but after careful consideration of the present circumstances of our country, Washington expresses his confidence that America is stable, and he has concluded that his countrymen will not disapprove of his return to Mount Vernon as a private citizen. He thanks his fellow citizens for the honors bestowed upon him, and he reiterates his belief that he was never qualified to be their president. Here perhaps I ought to stop, he writes, but after solemn reflection and out of undying love of his country, Washington doesn't want to depart without providing the disinterested warnings of a parting friend. Though Washington felt the country was stable, many feared it would be torn apart without his leadership. The farewell address, therefore, was Washington's way of offering encouragement and advice to the citizens of the country. Also, he did not address Congress with his farewell address. He had it published in a public newspaper, and he didn't have it as a farewell address, but as to the citizens of the United States. And later on into the speech, he says, "Remain united. The name of American, which belongs to you in your national capacity, must always exalt the true, just pride of patriotism more than any appellation derived from local discrimination." Washington knows that the success of America lies in the unity of his people, so he warns citizens to stay guarded against attempts to divide them. With slight shades of differences, you have the same religion, manners, habits, and political principles, he argues. You have in a common cause fought and triumphed together. Uphold the Constitution. The basis of our political system is the right of the people to make and to alter their constitutions of government. But the Constitution, which at any time exists until changed by an explicit and authentic act of the whole people, is sacredly obligatory upon all. Now, this is one of the points I want to touch on here. Is he says act of the whole people. We have a few in office now who don't think about the whole people. They just think about themselves. And without the unity and the Constitution, this country would not last very long. Washington's voices his support for the new Constitution, writing that it was a big improvement over the Articles of Confederation. He notes that it is the right of the American people to alter the government as they see fit, but he reminds the people that it should only be done by constitutional amendment. Until then, the Constitution must be adhered to in its existing form. Washington warns that political factions might try to obstruct the execution of laws. While they claim to act for the will of the people, does this sound familiar? Their true intentions are to place more power in the hands of the unprincipled man. He also warns against another method of assault by which groups will attempt to pass constitutional amendments that weaken the government to a point where it can no longer defend itself. Amendment 2, the right to bear arms. They're trying to do away with it now. Abortion. Well, that's not really covered in the Constitution, but his advice: give the new government time to mature and only pass amendments after the most careful considerations. That's where I have problems with the government today. You have them up there that all they want to do is for them. They say they're trying to help people. They're trying to do this for the people of the United States, but they're in it for themselves. And here we go. Beware of political parties. They are likely, in the course of time and things, to become potent engines by which cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men will be enabled to subvert the power of the people and to usurp for themselves the reins of government. This is where they're trying to bring in socialism now. They bring in socialism, we lose a lot of rights, and we need to fight against this movement and keep going with the democratic government that we had, that we used to have. One of Washington's most forceful warnings relates to political parties. During his presidency, he had witnessed the rise of two parties: the Democratic Republican Party, led by Thomas Jefferson, and Alexander Hamilton's Federalist Party, which is now Democrats. Stick to our morals. All the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. That's where he talks about religion, Christ, and the Constitution. All the men that put the Constitution together were Christian men. Washington directly links religion and morality to private and public happiness. Now, you got a bunch of people out there, and they pushed it through years ago for a separation of religion and state. Religion helped write the Constitution of the United States. So there's no reason why we should not have freedom of religion and should be able to talk about religion in our public schools. Religion principles are the foundation of a civilized society, he writes, and he warns against the idea that the nation's morality can be maintained without religion. Value education. Promote them as an object of primary importance, institutions for the general diffusion of knowledge. Education is essential, Washington writes, in a government based upon the will of the people. It is vital that the opinion of the people be informed and knowledgeable. There's a lot of things going on in Washington today that nobody knows about except for the people that are doing it. They need to keep all the people informed of what is going on. Balance the budget. As a very important source of strength, the security cherishes public credit. Balance the budget. How many trillions are we in debt now? Balance the budget. Washington writes that America should preserve its national credit by avoiding war and unnecessary borrowing in times of peace, we should pay down debt to avoid burdening for future generations. Well, they sure didn't do that. To do so, taxes will be necessary. He urges Americans to accept this fact and reminds them that no taxes can be devised which are not more or less inconvenient and unpleasant. How many do we have today that are inconvenient, and how many do we have that are unpleasant? He goes on to say that avoid foreign entanglement, observe good faith and justice towards all nations, cultivate peace and harmony with all. Now, that we have tried to do that. We have to put good faith and justice towards all nations and tried to cultivate peace and harmony with all. A large amount of Washington's address deals with the pitfalls of permanent alliances or rivalries between the United States and foreign nations. This will only cloud the government's judgment and lead to unnecessary wars, he argues. Instead, Washington encourages good faith and justice towards all nations. He points out that America is blessed to be geographically isolated from the wars of Europe. Why forego the advantages of so peculiar situation, he asks? Trade, likewise, should be carried out impartially with all nations. And then, as he's wrapping up, he wants to apologize to the people of the United States. He says, "Forgive me my mistakes. I shall also carry with me the hope that my country will never cease to view with indulgence, and that after 45 years of my life dedicated to its service with an upright zeal, the faults of incompetent abilities will be consigned to oblivion, as myself must soon be to the mansion of rest." Washington concludes his address by asking his countrymen to forgive his failures. They were by no means intentional. Now that he has shared these counsels of an old and affectionate friend, Washington says he looks forward to joining his fellow citizens in reaping the rewards of this free government, which he helped establish over his 45 years of public service. He hits on lots of good points in this address that he did, especially talking about the parties. The two parties need to work together. Washington stated that in his address. The parties need to work together. They don't need to be knocking heads, trying to take control and be the divided country that we are now. There's a lot more that I wanted to say on this video, but right now it's kind of hard for me to think about it. But just remember, when you go out to the polls, when you go out to vote, remember what the preamble of the Constitution, of the Constitution says. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union. Remember that. We, the people. Not us, the slave drivers. How about that? So I'm going to end this video. And remember to hit that subscribe button. Hit that like button. Leave comments. And I will see y'all in next week. So without further ado, from my family to yours, God bless America.